Hi, this is Bobby Woods. Discipleship Pastor here at Shelby Christian Church. Welcome to Theology 201, Angels and Demons, Part 2, where we're talking about demons or fallen angels. Now, fallen angels were once God's angels who rebelled against him and were cast out of heaven. The Lord, or the prince of these fallen angels, is Satan. Now, fallen angels or messengers come to serve Satan, but their power is limited, and judgment, we know, will await them in the future. Now, many of God's holy angels sinned with Satan when he fell, is certain. Those fallen angels became demons because of they're wicked and they're under Satan's leadership. Now, throughout Scripture, there are many references to evil spirits and demons. Though there are only one Satan, there are legions of demons. In fact, a third of all the angels of God fell with Satan from heaven. We know that in Jude chapter 6 and in Revelation chapter 12. Now, demons possess the same attributes of holy angels. They are like supernatural intelligence and strength. Now, some of the demons are bound in chains until the day of judgment, but the rest are not constrained, but are free to travel and distress people on the earth. Their main objective is to oppose the work of God and mankind, especially the people of God. Now, some believe that fallen angels are referred to in 2 Peter 2 and in Jude 6 are possibly the beings referred to as the sons of God in Genesis 6. But there is no real distinction, we know, between fallen angels and demons. Satan is referred to in 7 books of the Old Testament and every writer of the New Testament. In the Gospels, he is mentioned in 29 times, but all 4 of these in the Scripture are by words of Christ. Satan is referred to by different names throughout Scripture. Each of these names is character illuminating, describing some aspect of him and his wicked ways. Now, his formal names, of course, the first is Satan, which means adversary. It's used 17 times in the Old Testament and 34 in the New Testament. There's also the term the devil, that name for the head of the fallen angels. It means to throw, for he hurls accusations, he slanders, he tears down or defames God to man and man to God. He's also called the serpent, and this describes his subtlety and beguiling nature, also used with the great dragon in Revelation. He is called Beelzebub, the ruler of demons, or the lord of flies, or filth. Now, the ruler of the prince of this world, or god of this age. Satan does not rule the world, but he rules the counter kingdom he began at his fall. It stands in opposition and defiance of God's rule. Jesus calls him this 3 times in John. Now, Paul calls him the prince of this world, which many walk with until their conversion. He is called the tempter in Matthew 4 and Thessalonians 3. He's called the dragon, a huge serpent, throughout all of Revelation. He is called the evil one in John 17 and 1 John 5. For he loves evil, and he tries to move the whole world to wickedness, just as he did with Cain. Now, Satan, though supernaturally powerful, is a created being. He was created by God and was perfect in all his ways until he sinned. Now, we find Satan's sin in Ezekiel chapter 28 and Isaiah 14 and in Luke chapter 10. You see, Satan desired to be equal to God. He desired to be superior over the stars or other angels. And pride. You see, Zion is the mountain of God in the Old Testament. And Satan wanted to sit on it or to rule over God's people, like or even instead of God. So he desired to ascend above the heights of the clouds or heaven to rule there. He aspired to make himself just like God. Now, there are all kinds of other names and characteristics of Satan. There's the word Abaddon, which is found in Revelation chapter 9. He is called the accuser of our brethren in Revelation 12. He is called the adversary in 1 Peter 5. He is called the angel of the bottomless pit in Revelation 9. He is called Apollonion in Revelation 9. He is called Beelzebub in Matthew 12 and Mark 3 and in Luke 11. He is called cowardly in James 4. But he's also called cunning in Genesis 3 and 2 Corinthians 11. He is called Belial in 2 Corinthians 6. He's called deceitful in 2 Corinthians 11. He's called the devil in Matthew 4 and Luke 4 and Revelation 20. He is called the enemy in Matthew 13. He's called evil spirit in 1 Samuel 16. He's called the father of lies in John 8. He is fierce according to Luke 8. He's called the God of this age in 2 Corinthians 4. He is called the great red dragon in Revelation 12. He's called the greatest of the fallen angels, also in Revelation 12. He's called the liar in John 8. He's called a lying spirit in 1 Kings 22. He's called a murderer in John 8. He's called the old serpent in Revelation 12 and Revelation 20. He is called the power or the ruler of darkness in Ephesians 6 and Colossians 1. He's called powerful in Ephesians 2. He is called the prince of this world in John 12, 14, and 16. And he's called the prince of demons in Matthew 12. He's called the prince or the power of the air in Ephesians 2. He's called proudful in 1 Timothy 3. He is called the ruler of the darkness of this world in Ephesians 6. And of course, he's called Satan in many, many places. He's called the serpent in Genesis 3 and 2 Corinthians 11 and Revelation 20. He's called a slanderer in Job 1. He is called the spirit that works in the children of disobedience in Ephesians 2. He is called the tempter in Genesis 3 and Matthew 4 and in 1 Thessalonians 3. He is called the God of this world in 2 Corinthians 4. He is called an unclean spirit in Matthew 12. He is called the wicked one in Matthew 13. He is called the synagogue of Satan in Revelation 2 and 3. And he's called wicked in 1 John 2. Now, Satan has power over the wicked. They are considered his children, Acts 13. They do his will in John 8. He possesses them in Luke 22. He blinds them in 2 Corinthians 4. He deceives in Revelation 20. He ensnares in 1 Timothy 3. And they are all punished with him in Matthew 25. Now, Satan's power, he has some power over God's people. He's allowed to tempt us, 1 Chronicles 21, afflict us, Job 2, oppose us, Zechariah 3, to sift us, Luke 22. He's able to deceive us in 2 Corinthians 11. He disguises himself in 2 Corinthians 11. But as believers, we have power over Satan. We can watch against him, 2 Corinthians 2. We can fight against him, Ephesians 6. We can resist him, James 4 and 1 Peter 5. We can crush him, Romans 16. We can overcome him, 1 John 2 and Revelation 12. Now we know that Christ had triumph over Satan. It was predicted in Genesis 3. It was portrayed in Matthew 4. It was proclaimed in Luke 10. Now, I want you to imagine too that at the same time, while we have power over Satan, around us there is a constant spiritual warfare between angels and demons. Now, Ephesians 6 tells us that we need to put on the full armor of God in order to fight against Satan. We are at war, whether we like it or not. And from the moment of our salvation, there is a struggle that takes place within our spirit. Satan and his demons use a variety of destructive tactics to tempt, to cast doubt, to lie, to murder, to guilt, to produce fear, to confuse, to stricken with sickness, to produce pride, and to slander in order to hinder a Christian's walk with God. While demons do a lot of destruction in the world today, they are not exclusively to blame for all the evil in the world. For much of the sin mentioned in the Bible is the result of people's own free will, our own activities. Now, the Bible warns believers to be sober-minded and watchful, for the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. We see that in 1 Peter 5. So we are urged to resist him and to give no opportunity to the devil. Now, there are fightings in the heavenlies I talked about earlier between angels and demons, which we don't see. And we see this in Scripture in Daniel chapter 10. You see, Daniel the prophet was fasting and mourning for Israel's exile for 3 full weeks. This was the period of time when Israel had sinned so much against God that God allowed the country of Babylon and Assyria to come in and to take Israel out and to exile them back from their lands. And Daniel, after 70 years, had been praying. He was just fasting. He was just mourning for Israel's exile, wanting God's people to be able to return to Jerusalem and to rebuild the temple and rebuild the wall. And as he is praying for this 3 weeks, he sees a vision of one of God's angels, most likely Gabriel. And the angel says that God sent him the moment Daniel began to humble himself and pray. So why did it take 3 weeks for this angel to get to Daniel? Because this angel was unable to get past the prince of Persia. It took the archangel Michael to come and to help him fight his way through to get to Daniel. This prince of Persia symbolizes a powerful demonic spirit. This symbolism is used elsewhere in Scripture. You can see that in Ezekiel chapter 28 and Isaiah 14. There seems to be both angelic and demonic powers over different principalities and powers throughout Scripture. Now, this concludes our lessons on angels and demons. If you have any questions at all, please email me at bwoods@shelbychristian.org. I look forward to hearing from your questions. You have a blessed day.